I want to warn you, this story includes some disturbing details.
Well, day two of the Benjamin Taylor trial continued this afternoon. Taylor is accused of the rape and murder of 10-month-old Emmaleigh Barringer back in 2016.
And at that time, did you see anybody else in the basement?
There was nobody else in the basement, no ma'am.
Just you and Deputy Saltzgater?
Yes ma'am.
Was there an exterior door?
There was.
Was it closed?
It was closed, yes.
Was she breathing normally?
No.
Did you notice any bleeding?
Just a little around her nose and mouth.
How did she feel when you touched her skin?
She was freezing.
The little girl was simply adored by her mom and siblings. She was their tiny warrior as she came into the world a whole 8 weeks earlier than everyone expected. But on one horrific night when the entire family was sound asleep, something completely unthinkable and terrifying happened to this defenseless little darling. We want to warn you, this story includes some disturbing details. Honestly, this is one of the worst and most frightening cases I've ever had to talk about, so I want to warn you right away that it may be very difficult for people with weak nerves to listen to this. The man who abused this little girl turned out to be a true master of deception and had been pretending to be a completely different person for many years. This is something unreal and shocking. It's about Emmaleigh Barringer. Emmaleigh Barringer was born on the sacred holiday of Thanksgiving in 2015. She arrived in this world 8 weeks ahead of her due date to her mommy, Amanda Atkins. Emmaleigh had an absolutely charming smile and was a very cute, pleasant, and cheerful baby. She practically never cried. Emmaleigh had 3 older brothers and a sister whom she loved to play and spend time with. A 7-year-old brother, Nathaniel, a 6-year-old sister, Carly, and a 2-year-old brother, Cameron. When Emmaleigh turned 10 months old, she had just started taking her first steps and babbling her first words. The whole family simply adored this little one. In the summer of 2016, Emmaleig's mom, Amanda, decided to move from their house in the state of Maryland to West Virginia to start a new life for herself and her kids. Before that, they lived on the outskirts of Baltimore, and Amanda perfectly understood that it wasn't the best or safest place to raise children there. So she thought that the rural area of West Virginia with its picturesque landscapes would be a much better choice for her family. Almost immediately after moving to West Virginia, Amanda met a man named Benjamin Taylor, or simply Benji, as everyone called him. Benji instantly captured Amanda's heart and just drove her crazy. He seemed like the perfect guy in every way. Benji was constantly hanging around Amanda and really loved going everywhere with her and the children. He behaved as if he had long been an integral part of their family. Amanda was simply beside herself with happiness and considered him her dream prince. He was perfect in everything. In fact, in August 2016, Benji even posted a photo on his Facebook page where he and Amanda are kissing. And literally a few days later, on September 7th, he changed his relationship status to in a relationship with Amanda Atkins. However, Benji had a not-so-clean biography and a criminal past. He had convictions for burglary and had also violated the terms of his parole twice. But just a couple of months after meeting Amanda, Benji moved in to live with her and the kids. On October 2nd, Amanda and her 3 older children went to bed around 9 p.m. Benji, however, decided to stay up a little longer. He didn't feel tired at all, just like little Emmaleigh. The girl was sitting in her swing in the living room while Benji went down to the basement, supposedly to do laundry. At some point, Benji took little Emmaleigh downstairs with him while he finished the laundry and listened to music. Amanda woke up around 4 in the morning and peeked into Emmaleig's crib, but she wasn't there. And her partner Benji wasn't in bed next to her either, so Amanda was completely confused and didn't know where they both had gone. She assumed that maybe they had fallen asleep somewhere downstairs, Benji on the couch, and Emmaleigh in her swing, so she went to check, but they weren't in the room or the living room. Then Amanda went down the stairs to the basement, remembering that Benji was going to do laundry there, and that's where she saw a horrific and nightmarish scene that she will never forget. Amanda caught Benji half naked, kneeling over her naked daughter with his pants down. The light in the basement was dim, so Amanda didn't immediately understand what was happening. She asked him what he was doing there, and Benji calmly replied that he was just wiping Emmaleigh off. Amanda asked in surprise. Why on earth he was wiping the child in the middle of the night in the basement? And then she noticed that something was clearly wrong with her daughter's face. So she ran up to Benji and Emmaleigh. The girl's face was all smeared with blood. Some strange gurgling sounds escaped from her throat, and she was cold as ice. Amanda frantically grabbed the child in her arms and slapped Benji across the face with all her might, screaming, "What have you done? What did you do to her?" Then she ran upstairs and dialed 911 with trembling hands. The woman screamed through tears into the dispatcher's ear that her little daughter was bleeding from down there. And with tears in her eyes, she kept repeating, "That scumbag raped her, I'm sure of it." On the recording of the call, you can hear Amanda yelling and cursing at Benji. "What have you done to her, you inhuman monster? Why the hell was she naked?" When the medics arrived at the scene at the house on Meadowlark Lane in the town of Ripley, West Virginia, they saw Amanda standing on the porch holding a bloodied Emmaleigh in her arms. The cops asked Benji to lift his shirt, and underneath was a huge bloodstain. He mumbled to the officers that he must have gotten dirty when he picked Emmaleigh up. The policeman also noticed blood on Benji's thigh, which was definitely from the child's body. Emmaleigh was rushed to the hospital in Charleston in critical condition, where doctors soon declared her brain dead. When Amanda held the lifeless body of her little one in her arms 2 days later, on October 5th, she made the difficult decision to turn off the life support machines, and Emmaleigh was officially pronounced dead. The paramedics told the cops that Emmaleig's horrific injuries were most likely inflicted several hours before the emergency crew was called. An autopsy of the child's body confirmed severe bleeding, and the nature of the injuries clearly indicated the forcible insertion of an adult male sexual organ. The girl also had severe head injuries, indicating that she had either been thrown to the floor or hit hard with something heavy. The official cause of death was declared as a skull fracture. Benji was arrested and charged with first-degree sexual assault. But later, on October 6th, it was requalified as intentional murder. During interrogation, Benji Taylor told the police that he had carried Emmaleigh to the basement, but then allegedly lost consciousness. The last thing he remembered was loading things into the washing machine. According to Benji, he had drunk 8 bottles of beer between 2 p.m. and midnight that day, and had also smoked some marijuana with Amanda shortly before. But the deputy sheriff, who was the first to arrive at the crime scene, noted that at the time of his arrival, Benji did not give any impression of being intoxicated. Benji also said that he had probably passed out about a dozen times, and each of these episodes could have lasted from half an hour to 40 minutes, or from 5 to 6 hours. He couldn't figure out what was happening to him. He also claimed that he didn't remember washing the baby's blood down the sink to cover his tracks. But the truth is, this scumbag didn't lift a finger to save the life of the child to whom he had inflicted terrible injuries during his perverted attack. The cops also thoroughly examined Benji's phone and found out that he had been searching for legal porn from 2:52 until about 3:17 a.m. They also noted a 9-second outgoing call from Benji to a number labeled home. This happened at 4:54 a.m., and literally 6 minutes after that, an ambulance crew arrived at the house. Later, Benji received a message from his brother asking if everything was okay. I understand that it was that home number he was trying to call, but no one picked up. Around 5:14 a.m., Benji texted back, "I'm in deep bro, but don't sweat it. I'm going to croak soon." Numerous bloodstains were found on the bedding and clothing down in the basement. Investigators also obtained a search warrant to seize the clothes Benji was wearing that night, as well as to take a sample of his DNA. The suspect was being held at the South Central Regional Jail, and the court set bail at $2 million on October 5, 2016. Someone even sent a petition to the federal government demanding that Benjamin Taylor be publicly hanged. It managed to gather quite a few signatures from concerned citizens, which is not surprising, but then it was still taken down. In March 2019, the case finally went to trial. The process lasted 5 days. For most of the hearings, Benji sat in a bulletproof vest, helmet, and handcuffs. Throughout the trial, a lot of evidence was presented, and many witnesses were heard who gave the defendant a character reference. Among those who spoke on Benji's behalf were his longtime friend, his brother's girlfriend, the mother of his own son. Yes, at the time of committing this vile crime, he had a little son growing up. His father, mother, and brother. Benji's brother's girlfriend said that he had been very supportive of her during her pregnancy and also when her boyfriend had health problems. She added that Benji had a positive influence on her son's life and never behaved overly, sexually or aggressively in her presence. Brena Garnez, the mother of Benji's own son, stated that the defendant often played with her daughter, and she had no complaints about his treatment of children. The woman noted that when Benji drank, he became very quiet, but never showed signs of aggression or excessive sexuality. She said that she could never imagine in her Benji's father decided to publicly say in the courtroom that he was proud of his son despite everything. He also emphasized that Benjamin had never been prone to cruelty, aggression, or sexual perversions. The man told the jury how his wife woke him up on the morning of October 3, 2016, and they raced to Amanda's house as fast as they could. David recalled that Amanda behaved absolutely calmly and never once showed signs of anger when he drove her to the hospital. Benji's father added that he couldn't believe his ears when he heard how the police and paramedics described Amanda's condition as extremely upset and hysterical that morning, because to him, she seemed quite composed. By the way, a recording was also played in court where you can hear Amanda screaming and sobbing uncontrollably at the hospital. And after that, Benji's mother, Rita Taylor, blurted out that Amanda was just pretending to be hysterical. Benji's brother, Zachary Taylor, didn't say much in court, but he noted that the defendant had a very positive influence on his sons, and that he could never have done what he was accused of. Benji's mother, Rita, shared several touching stories about how kind and caring he was to his son, nephew, and other children in their family. She also mentioned 3 past incidents when her son was under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and then he would just lie there quietly and not move. Of course, she also insisted that her son would never in his life do what he was accused of. But interestingly, on the morning of October 3rd, she received a phone call. It was Benji. He said he loved her and hung up. The prosecutor also asked Benji's mother if her son would have called 911 if he had come to his senses and found an injured child in his arms, to which Mrs. Taylor replied in the affirmative. So, why did no one ever call an ambulance until Amanda went downstairs and saw this nightmare with her own eyes? Something definitely doesn't add up here. An audio recording of Benji talking to someone on the phone while he was already behind bars was also played in court. In that clip, he can be heard saying that he didn't know the child was bleeding until someone else told him about it. And in another recording, Benji admits to his interlocutor, "I'm not afraid to take punishment for what I did." But according to Benji himself in court, he was actually trying to establish a relationship with little Emmaleigh. He stated that he had serious intentions to marry Amanda and start a new family with her. The defendant also added that when he entered Emmaleig's room, she always beamed with her charming smile. The prosecution inquired with Benji if it would be uncharacteristic of him to joke about hurting someone during sex. He replied that yes, he would never allow himself to do that. Then the prosecutor showed Benji screenshots of his own posts on Facebook. There were plenty of memes that mocked and made fun of the topic of pain and sex. And back in June, Benji himself had bragged on his page, "I will never apologize for being a sex freak." This phrase appealed to him so much that he even made it the cover of his profile. Forensic experts found numerous blood traces on the bedding and floor in the basement. Blood was also found in poor Emmaleig's diaper, along with probable traces of male semen. Similar results were obtained from an examination of the child's genitals for sexual abuse. And on the pants Benji was wearing that fateful night, biological fluids characteristic of males were also found. The defense called Amanda's former neighbor to testify. Barbara Kay lived near the victim at the time the tragedy occurred. Kay's bedroom in her apartment shared a wall with Amanda's house. On the night Emmaleigh was attacked, Barbara had already gone to bed. Then, around 12:30, she was awakened by the crying and desperate screaming of a child behind the wall. Kay jumped up and was about to call the police, but suddenly the child's screams subsided, so she thought that probably nothing terrible had happened and went back to bed. And Benji's lawyer kept repeating that his client was being accused completely baselessly and groundlessly. The defense attorney argued that the police should have considered other possible suspects and not focused solely on Benji. However, It took the jury only about 2 hours to find Benjamin Taylor guilty of intentional murder, of killing a child as a result of abuse, and of sexual abuse by a guardian.
The jury reached a verdict.
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
Will you please deliver the jury verdict form and the instructions, if you have them right there, to the bailiff? I have the bailiff deliver to me. Going to deliver the jury verdict form to the clerk, who will read the verdict.
We, the members of the pettit jury, as to the issues joined as count 2 of the indictment, find the defendant, Benjamin Taylor, guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the members of the pettit jury, having found the defendant guilty of murder of the first degree, do hereby find as follows. We do not recommend mercy. Count 3. We, the members of the pettit jury, as to the issues joined as count 3 of the indictment, find the defendant, Benjamin Taylor, guilty of death of a child by child abuse. Count 4. We, the members of the pettit jury, having found the defendant not guilty of count 2 above, as to the issues joined as count 4 of the indictment, find the defendant, Benjamin Taylor, neither, or on the bottom, we found defendant guilty of count 2 above, and as such, as instructed by the court, shall not consider this count. Count 5. We, the members of the pettit jury, as to the issues joined as count 5 of the indictment, find the defendant, Benjamin Taylor, guilty of sexual abuse by a guardian, custodian, or person in position of trust. Signed 4 persons, signed 1.
So say all of you.
Yes, sir.
All have nodded in the affirmative. Bruce, will you please hand this to have the prosecutor come forward, review the jury verdict to see if there's an objection as to form. Ms. Franklin, after you have reviewed it, please give it to Mr.
After this guilty verdict, they also made a sentencing recommendation for the defendant: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. According to the verdict, Benjamin Taylor received a life sentence for intentional murder, years behind, bars for the death of a child as a result of abuse, and 10 to 20 years in prison plus a $55,000 fine for sexual abuse of a child under his care. He will serve these sentences consecutively, one after the other. Interestingly, for the first time during the entire trial, Benjamin Taylor finally showed some emotion. All this time he had been staring glumly in front of him, never once paying attention to the chilling evidence being shown on the large screen in the courtroom. And he didn't shed a single tear, even when the horrifying photos of little Emmaleig's battered body were shown. But immediately after the announcement of the sentence, Benjamin Taylor suddenly burst into tears. Listen to what Judge Tatterson said. The verdict of the jury: you have been found guilty of intentional murder as stated in count 2 of the indictment, guilty of killing a child as a result of abuse as stated in count 3 of the indictment, and also of sexual abuse by a guardian. I wonder if the jury's decision was unanimous. Family members who were present in the courtroom stated that they finally felt justice had triumphed for their little Emmaleigh. The defendant's attorney announced his intention to file an appeal, since the jury had allegedly not taken into account some important evidence. In April 2017, Governor Jim Justice signed the so-called Emmaleig's Law, which significantly increased criminal liability for child abuse resulting in death. This legislative act was named after the deceased girl. A huge crowd of concerned people gathered on the evening of Friday, October 7, 2016, in the city of Pasadena, Maryland, to honor the memory of Emmaleigh Barringer and light candles. Representatives of several local communities came to express their love and support for the victim's family. Emmaleig's relatives were dressed in T-shirts with her photos on them. They asked all those present to respect their right to privacy, but expressed sincere gratitude to the people for the love and sympathy shown. Emmaleigh Barringer was buried on Sunday, October 16, 2016, at the McCully Polsey Funeral Home in the Ott Height, same Pasadena. Little Emmaleigh was buried and immortalized at the Glen Haven Memorial Park in the town of Glen Burnie. Well, thank you for listening to Emmaleig's sad story from beginning to end today. This is just a horrible, nightmarish case. I can't comprehend it, not one bit. This is the worst, most disgusting type of monster, one who is capable of such inhuman, perverted abuse of a cute, innocent baby. Benji hid his true vile nature so masterfully that everyone around him thought he was a respectable person. Even the witnesses who gave him character references in court were convinced that he was a good guy. It's very hard for me to believe that poor baby Emmaleigh died one of the most terrible, painful deaths imaginable. Emmaleigh Barringer's story ended in unthinkable tragedy, a life stolen by betrayal, a monster disguised as family. But from that darkness rose Emmaleig's law, ensuring her name protects other children forever. Her killer will die in prison. Her light, though gone too soon, still shines. In memory, in justice, in love that refuses to be silenced.